That's right, Sergei Mikhailovich. Why don't you come home with me? My wife has made some brandy. I was saving it to celebrate the new year, but on such an occasion. I'm sorry, Pavel Ivanovich. I just can't. But I do want to ask one favor in return. Let me take Andreev to Arkagla. That's one thing I'll never do. Andreev is, how should I put it? Your personal enemy? Precisely. Well, he's my personal friend. I thought you would be more receptive to my request. Take a look at these petitions. Kisulyov fell silent. Okay, he can go. Make up the transfer papers. Have him come for them himself. I stepped across the threshold of the office. Kisulyov was staring at the door. You're going to Arkagla. Here are your transfer papers. Lunin had already left, but Kolyma was waiting for me. You can leave this evening, about 9 o'clock. Right now, we have a case of acute appendicitis. He handed me a slip on paper. I never saw either Kisulyov or Kolesnikov again. Kisulyov was soon transferred to Elgin, where he was accidentally killed a few months after arriving. A thief broke into his house at night. Hearing steps, Kisulyov grabbed the double-barrel shotgun from the wall, cocked it, and attacked the thief. The thief tried to get out the window, and Kisulyov struck him in the back with the butt of the shotgun. The gun went off, and Kisulyov took both the barrels right in the stomach. Every convict in every coal mining area of Kolyma was delighted. The newspaper with the announcement of Kisulyov's funeral passed from hand to hand. In the mines, the wrinkled scrap of paper was held up to the battery light. People read it, rejoiced, and shouted, "Hurrah, Kisulyov died! So there is a God." It was from this Kisulyov that Sergei Mikhailovich had saved me. Convicts from Arkagla worked the mine. For every 100 men working underground, there were 1,000 working in support groups. Hunger had reached Arkagla, and of course, it reached the political prisoner barracks first. Sergei Mikhailovich was angry. I'm not the son that can warm everybody. I got you a job as an orderly in the chemical laboratory, so you had to figure it out for yourself how to live. Camp style, you understand. Sergei Mikhailovich patted me on the shoulder. Dmitri worked here before you. He sold all the glycerin, both barrels. He got 20 rubles and a half-liter for a half-liter bottle. Said it was honey. Ha ha ha. These convicts will drink anything. That's not my way. Just what is your way? The orderly's job wasn't reliable. There were strict orders regarding me, and I was quickly transferred to the mine. The desire to eat grew stronger. Sergei Mikhailovich rushed about the camp. Our doctor had one passion. He was immensely attracted by camp officials of all types. Friendship, or even a shade of friendship, with any camp official was a source of unbelievable pride for him. He attempted to demonstrate his intimacy with the camp authorities in any way possible, and was capable of bragging for hours about his intimacy. I went to see him in his office, hungry but afraid to ask for a piece of bread. I sat and listened to his endless bragging. As for the camp authorities, they have real power. For there is no power but of God. Ha ha ha. All you have to do is please them, and everything is fine. I'd like to punch each and every one of them in the face. That's just your trouble. Listen, let's make an agreement. You can come see me. I know it's boring in the regular barracks. Boring? Sure, you can drop by, have a smoke. No one will give you a smoke in the barracks. I know what things are like over there. You light up, and 100 eyes are watching me. Just don't ask me to release you from work. I can't do that. That is, I can, but it's awkward. I won't interfere in that respect. As for food, I depend on my orderly for that. I don't stand in line myself for bread. So, if you need bread, ask my orderly Nikolai. How is it that after all your years in the camps, you can't lay your hands on some bread? You know what Olga Petrovna, the chief's wife, told me today? They're inviting me for dinner. There'll be booze, too. I have to go, Sergei Mikhailovich. Hungry and terrible days ensued. Once, no longer able to struggle with hunger, I went to the first aid station. Sergei Mikhailovich was sitting on a stool, clipping the dead nails from the frostbitten fingers of a dirty, hunched man. The nails fell with a click, one after the other, into an empty basin. Sergei Mikhailovich noticed me. I collected half a basin of these yesterday. A woman's face looked out from behind a curtain. We rarely saw women, let alone this close and in the same room. She looked beautiful to me. I bowed and said hello. Hello, she said in a low, wonderful voice. Sergei, is this your friend, the one you told me about? No, Sergei Mikhailovich, said, tossing his snips into a basin and walking over to the sink to wash his hands. Nikolai, he said to his orderly, who had just come in, take this basin away and bring some bread for him. He nodded in my direction. I waited until the bread was brought and left for the barracks. As for the woman, whose tender and beautiful face I remember to this day, I never saw her again. She was Edith Abanova, civilian party member, a nurse from the Olchan mine. She had fallen in love with Sergei Mikhailovich, taken up with him, got him transferred to Olchan, and obtained him an early release while the war was still going on. She traveled to Magadan to present Sergei Mikhailovich's case to Nikashov, the head of the far northern construction. She was expelled from the party for being involved with a prisoner. It was the usual method for putting a stop to such affairs. She got Lunin's case transferred to Moscow, had his sentence cancelled, and even managed to get permission for him to take his medical examinations at Moscow University, from which he graduated and had all his civil rights reinstated, and she married him formally. And when this descendant of a Decembrist received his medical degree, he abandoned Edith Abramovna and demanded a divorce. She got a pack of relatives, like all those people. I don't need that. He left Edith Abramovna, but he didn't manage to leave far northern construction. After graduation, he had to return to the far north for at least 3 years. As a licensed doctor, Lin used his connections with camp authorities to land an unexpectedly important announcement. Chief of Surgery appointment. Chief of Surgery at the Central Prison Hospital on the left bank of the Kolyma River in the village of Tbin. It was 1948, and by that time I was senior orderly of the surgical ward. I met Lunin on the stairway. He had a habit of blushing. When he was embarrassed. His face became very red when he saw me. But he treated me to a cigarette, congratulated me on my successes in my career, and told me about Edith Abramovna. Lunin's appointment was like a thunderbolt. Rubantsev had been in charge of surgery, a frontline surgeon, and a major in the medical service. He was an experienced, no-nonsense type who had moved here after the war. And not just for 3 days. Some didn't like Rubantsev. He didn't get along with the camp authorities, couldn't stand toadying and lying, and had terrible relations with Sherbakov, the chief of sanitation in Kolyma. Rubantsev had signed a contract and had been warned that the prisoners were his enemies. Being a man of an independent mind, however, he soon saw that he had been lied to during his political preparation. Rogues, embezzlers, slanderers, and loafers were his colleagues at the hospital. It was the prisoners, with their many skills, including medicine, who ran the hospital. Rubantsev realized where the truth lay, and he was not about to hide it. He applied to be transferred to Magadan, where there was a high school for his son. He was denied the transfer orally. After considerable effort, he managed to send his son to a boarding school 50 miles from Devin. This took several months, and by that time he was running his ward confidently and dismissing loafers and thieves. News of these threatening activities was immediately sent to Sherbakov's office in Magadan. Sherbakov didn't like to stand on ceremony with his subordinates. Cursing threats and prison sentences worked fine with prisoners, but they wouldn't do for a former frontline surgeon who had received medals in the war and who was working under contract. They wouldn't do for them. Sherbakov dug up Rubantsev's old application and had him transferred to Magadan. And although the academic year had already begun and the surgical ward was working smoothly, he had to abandon everything. Rubantsev left, and 3 days later, a drunken party was held in the treatment room. Even the principal doctor, Kovalyov, and the hospital director, Vinokrov, helped themselves to the surgical alcohol. They hadn't visited the surgical ward earlier because they were afraid of Rubantsev. Drunken parties began in all the doctors' offices, and nurses and cleaning women were invited. In a word, there were a lot of changes. Secondary irritation began to occur in operations in the surgical ward, since precious grain alcohol could not be wasted on patients. Half-drunk hospital officials strolled back and forth through the ward. This was my hospital. After I finished my course in 1946, I was sent here with a group of patients. The hospital grew before my eyes. It had been a regimental headquarters formerly, but after the war, a specialist on camouflage had judged it unsuitable because of its prominent location. Indeed, it could be seen for tens of miles, and so it was converted into a prison hospital. On leaving the 3-story building, the former owners, the Kolyma regiment, had ripped out all the plumbing and sewer pipes. All the chairs in the auditorium had been burned in the boiler. The walls were full of holes, and the doors were broken. The Kolyma regiment had left a Russian style. We had to repair everything, screw by screw, brick by brick. The doctors and assistants were doing their best to do a good job. For many of them, it was a sacred duty to pay for their medical education by helping people. All the loafers raised their heads when Rubantsev left. Why are you stealing alcohol from the medicine cabinets? Go to hell, a nurse answered me. Thank God that Rubantsev is gone, and Lunin is in charge now. I was amazed and depressed at Lunin's conduct. The party continued. At the next brief meeting, Lunin laughed at Rubantsev. He didn't do a single ulcer operation, and he's supposed to be a surgeon. This was nothing new. It was true that Rubantsev hadn't done any ulcer operations. The patients in the therapeutic wards who had this diagnosis were emaciated, undernourished prisoners who didn't have the slightest chance of surviving the operation. The background isn't right, Rubantsev would say. He's a coward, Lunin shouted, and transferred 12 such patients to the ward from the therapeutic ward. All 12 were operated on, and all 12 died. The hospital doctors remembered Rubantsev's experience and kindness. Sergei Mikhailovich, this is no way to work. Don't tell me what to do. I make up a report asking that a commission be sent from Magadan. I made up the report asking that a commission be sent from Magadan. I was transferred to a tree-cutting group in the forest. They wanted to send me to a penal mine, but the senior official of the local party chapter talked them out of it. This isn't 38 anymore. It's not worth the risk. A commission was sent, and Lunan was fired by Far Northern Construction. Instead of 3 years, he only had to serve 1.5. A year later, when the hospital administration had been replaced, I returned from my paramedic job in the forest to take charge of admitting patients to the hospital. Once in Moscow, I met the descendant of a Decembrist. We didn't say hello. 16 years later, I learned that Edith Abramovna had gotten Lunan reinstated in his job at Far Northern Construction. She had gone with him to the Chukotka Peninsula, to the village of Pevek. Here, they talked things out for the last time, and Edith Abramovna died. She drowned herself in the Pevek River. Sometimes my tranquilizers don't work, and I wake up at night. I remember the past and a woman's beautiful face. I hear her deep voice. Sergei, is this your friend? Thank you for listening.